Hello and welcome to the Dirty Air Debrief, a Formula One podcast for shits and gigs as well as for serious racecraft enthusiasts. My name is Devyani, your host. You can find me on TikTok at Formula Dev as well as on Twitter by the same. How the show works is that I have a bunch of topics that have been on my mind and I set random timers, so I have only a certain amount of time to talk about each topic. Otherwise, I would go on forever. It keeps it interesting, keeps it spicy. But right now it's Wednesday in America, so it's like a couple hours before Media Day starts in Australia. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about, okay? But I'm ready. I have my 3 beverages. I've got water, I've got coffee, I've got Coke Zero, so you know it's serious now. So let's get into it. We've got a few minutes to talk about the Australian Grand Prix and my hopes and predictions. Okay, so the Australian Grand Prix. I've always wondered what's in the water in Melbourne, what's in the air, what are they microdosing over there, because everyone kind of goes chaotic, unhinged. I mean, some of them already are, but it's just exacerbated, and I think everyone's just really chill over there, and that's why that happens. But I mean, the things that these drivers say in Melbourne, why am I saying it weird? In Melbourne, like, I'm sure their PR teams are having a heyday when they're in Melbourne because everyone is just unhinged and they're letting loose, which I love to see. It can't only be the jet lag. I mean, Carlos Sainz has given us such a foolproof tutorial on how to avoid jet lag. So there's been some controversy on TikTok, on Twitter, all over about this being the Daniel Ricciardo Grand Prix and why everybody's making everything about him, even though we have an Australian driver on the F1 grid and an Australian driver on the F2 grid. And to that I say, I feel like the AUSGP is making the AUSGP about Daniel Ricciardo. I mean, his fat heads are everywhere. He's like on every promotional poster. And I get it. He's a big name and like he brings in people. Everyone has so much love for him, even though he's not on the grid. And it's a good way to market your stuff. I understand. But I don't think that people saying it's the Daniel Ricciardo Grand Prix takes away from Oscar Piastri's experience in any way. I think it actually enhances it. I mean, like, the more Australians, the better, right? I mean, in my head, I don't know. Because you've got Daniel Ricciardo, you've got Mark Webber will be there, not as a driver, but he'll be there on, like, Oscar's team in his corner. You've got Jack Doohan. Okay, moving on to my predictions. Or not my predictions. More my hopes and dreams and delusions. So I obviously want Oscar in the points. I want Alex in the points. My dream podium is a Charles win, a Lance podium, because I think he needs to start beating Fernando Alonso. I mean, I know his wrists are probably going to be closer to 100% now, and I think he needs to bring it to Fernando Alonso. If there's another Aston podium this weekend, it needs to be Lance Stroll. Yeah, that's my take. And as a third place, I would love to see a Charles Lance Lewis podium. I think that could be really fun. But I just know the probability of that is unlikely. And I know there can't not be a Red Bull person on the podium unless like there's an electrical failure or something that's like unexpected. But if everything's normal, I'm sure Max Verstappen will be on the podium. Like, it's just unlikely that he's not. And I don't think he's ever won the Australian Grand Prix, so I'm sure that's on his bucket list to like win every race he's competed at. So that should be interesting. In terms of other things, the Australian Grand Prix has quite the history because the Australian Grand Prix has been running in Melbourne since I think 1996, and before that, it was in Adelaide, and in Adelaide, it used to be the last race of the season, so there would often be championship battles concluding there. And in Melbourne, it was usually until Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, it was the first race of the season. Now it's third, but it's still a big deal because the teams have to travel so far, and there's such a big logistical commitment to it. But I always think the AUSGP is a really fun time, even as a spectator, just because I see the drivers having more fun, being more open, being more excited. And I know in the past there's the joke that, oh, we're in Danny Rick land, so we gotta be on our Danny Rick levels. But I think it really is the fan experience as well as the AUSGP just being good at running an event and being able to take care of all of the parts of putting on a show, like taking care of the fans and the spectators, the drivers and teams, as well as their own organizers. Oh my god, okay. Timer is ringing in my head. Okay, I don't know if you can hear that, by the way. Okay, so our next topic is the Ferrari restructuring. And I know there's been stuff going on at McLaren as well, but I don't know. So after Jeddah, there was a Eurosport France interview that came out, or not interview, a Eurosport report that came out. And I never really know what the deal is with Italian media, but I think now that there's more French stuff happening in Ferrari, I feel like we can give equal credence. But again, this is all like grain of salt with everything Ferrari and reporting, especially in the media. But basically, I talked last time about Gino Rosado and the Enrico trios and all of the stuff, David Sanchez, everything happening. And I was talking about how it's really unclear what Gino Rosado did at Ferrari. And I think nobody really, outside of Maranello, nobody really knew. But it seems like his main job was external relations. So outside of Maranello stuff, like linking VIPs and sponsors, that's what it seems like. And he started in the 90s, I think, as like a consultant or what's the other word for that? A freelancer. And then Jean Todt made his position permanent. And he was also really close friends with Kimi Räikkönen. So he left with Kimi in 2009 and came back in 2014. So he's been at Ferrari for a long time. But the interesting part of this interview was that people think that he's where the press leaks are coming from, because there's been so much internal information leaking out of Maranello. A lot of people are speculating that it's him, which is pretty likely. He's been like tweeting and posting, he's been posting some weird stuff. He recently posted like a quote or an excerpt of a old Gianni Agnelli interview, the head of Fiat, the Agnelli family and all that, where Agnelli was talking about the principles he was talking about the principles that men of Fiat have to not listen to what others write about them, to not take themselves too seriously. It was just a weird it felt like subtweeting, like it was just all overall kind of weird. So that's that. The other speculation, which just seems like this is just like rumors, it seems like that some of the leaks that are coming from Ferrari and Maranello are coming from the Sainz camp in effort to control a narrative and take back some power that they lost after Binotto left, because the idea is that Binotto was more of a Carlos Sainz guy, and obviously Fred Vasserwitz's history with Charles is more of a Charles guy. That's all speculation. I don't know about that, but there's been a lot of conflicting reports about how much power Fred Vasseur has in Ferrari, and whether he's butting heads with Elkin and Vigna or if they're giving him more power. And I think that David Sanchez being let go shows that he does have power to do what he wants, even if it's not something that Elkin and Vigna agree with. It's all happening suddenly. It feels like it's happening suddenly, even if they've planned this like in the winter or once Vasseur got here and they're just releasing it to the public now. Either way, it just feels like it's happening so rushed or in the middle of races, or the timing of when the news comes out is the thing that's strangest to me. And I think a lot of it gets leaked, and so they're on the back foot as well. Okay, we've got a Twitter speed round because I feel like I'm chronically online on Twitter. So, okay, my most recent favorite interaction has been Carlos Alcaraz, a tennis player. I think he's number one right now. I don't know. At the Miami Open, he signed in the camera saying 33 soon, and then tweeted and added Fernando Alonso because Fernando Alonso has 32 race wins, and he was asking him when is the next one coming. To which Fernando Alonso responded, obviously in Spanish, this is translated, so I could be wrong, but the translation said, "Lock him up, this guy is a phenomenon." I don't know what that means. It felt very like Hillary Clinton, lock her up, but I don't know. I don't want to make that connection. I don't think that's what he was talking about. But that was very strange. But I love a good tennis F1 crossover, especially after that 5-second video where they were naming athletes and and a bunch of them named tennis players. Anyway, another tweet I saw was about how many sponsors each team has, and now McLaren has the most with 47 or 49, I don't remember, which I just feel like their whole car is going to be, like, it's not going to be papaya, it's just going to be covered in sponsors, which I guess is fine, but it's very, here's a good analogy. Ferrari posting thirst traps and ice bath videos, and as well as C2 challenges, is to McLaren getting new sponsors. It feels like it's just like, you know, that video of that guy demonstrating the power of duct tape, and he, like, there's a barrel of water, and it's like gushing out, and he just puts tape on it, and it's like, okay, that'll solve the problem. That's what I feel like McLaren does with sponsors. But then again, I don't know anything about the business side of this, so this is just what it feels like. Oh, the next Twitter thing that didn't get me mad, but it was a graphic of Charles Leclerc, and it's like a picture of him looking really, not defunct, like devoid of emotion, no, disappointed, I guess. And it's comparing the amount of points he has this year so far after 2 races, 2 years prior, and like this year it's 6 points, and then last year it was like 45 or something, I don't know. And basically, I feel like Charles Leclerc has... I love Charles Leclerc, and sometimes I worry that he's girl bossed too close to the sun. Or not he has girl bossed, but the way he's written about or the way he's talked about, because I truly believe that he can bring it home for Ferrari. I believe that he is the next big, like, I mean, not next, but he is the big thing. Like, he is such a talent, but I feel like the way... like, the more you blow it up, the more expectation and, like, weight on their shoulders happens, and that part is stressful. And I feel like that only happens to... It used to happen to Max, too, before he won his championship. It used to happen to Lewis a lot. And now it's happening to Charles. I don't think it happened to Seb as much because he won, like, so quickly. He won within, like, his first 4 years, and then he won 4 straight. So, oh my gosh, only 2 minutes for this. Okay, we gotta move. So my next topic was the Forbes report that came out, I think, yesterday, and it's talking about the revenue of Formula One. So it's comparing 2022's revenue of So the 2022 Formula One season saw revenues of $2.573 billion, which was up from $2.136 billion in 2021. And they put the jump they attribute that big jump mostly from the removal of audience caps. So there is no limit on how many people could go to race, so more people were buying tickets. Also, they were talking about the record attendances all through Formula One, which will only increase because of Vegas. And they talk about the growing television audience, which there's a 28% increase from the average 949,000 viewers in 2021. And this is in the U.S. And the 2022 season was the first time in U.S. television history that there was an average of 1 million or more viewers per race, which is really interesting to me because after Jeddah, there were all these reports coming out on how television audiences have dipped in Formula One since these first 2 races, and everyone was attributing to, the Red Bull dominance era. Everyone knows Max is going to win, so why would they tune in? And that's why the audiences are going down. And I don't think that's necessarily it. Because that was the case the whole time of the last turbo hybrid era. From 2014 to 2021, it was Mercedes dominance, and I don't think it's just that Max is winning. I think there's also going to be there's a plateau coming in Formula One in terms of adding more fans and more interest. I think the thing we talk about, that boom of Drive to Survive and the pandemic and influencers and TikTok and all that, it's not dying down, but it's just leveling off. The meteoric rise it can't go on forever, right? Like exponential growth, it doesn't happen. It's impossible that it doesn't stop. So I think that's really what's happening, and it's causing people to freak out because the last couple of years has been, Formula One is going to be the most popular sport in the world. And I've seen a lot of Americans talk about how unserious Formula One is, and like that's why they can't take it as seriously as the NFL or the NBA or the NHL because of just like how the sport is run. How, first of all, there are these like major rule changes in the middle of a race, like the FI, like the fact that you can break a rule and then you can go to the person who's supposed to give you your punishment and like argue your case is not normal for how sports work. I mean, obviously, like in tennis, you can challenge a call, but you only have a certain amount of challenges, and there's like VAR to show you like, okay, it's right or wrong. But there's so much more subjectiveness in Formula One in terms of how rules are set and why things are the way they are. So I know there's advantages and disadvantages to it, and I know a lot of people also see Formula One as more entertainment than anything else. Like the sporting aspect of it isn't as strong because there's no like in football and soccer, like there's a ball and you just have to be good enough, and obviously there's team dynamics and who's on the pitch and who's not, but this whole there's it's not a spec car, right? There's no equal machinery, so you can't really test who's the best driver, and it's not just a test of who's the best driver because there's manufacturers involved. Oh my god, it's ringing. Okay, it's unclear if this format is going to work in the long term, just because I really am not finishing any of my thoughts up. But we'll see. I like it so far, but I am still talking really fast. Okay, but our next topic is on pay drivers in Formula One, and this idea that almost all drivers are going to be pay drivers in one aspect or another, and that it's not necessary that the drivers in Formula One are the best race car drivers in the world. And I think there's a lot of aspects to that. The first being that it's not enough to just be a fast driver or have good racecraft in Formula One. There's so much more to doing well within the world and also getting into it. But as I said earlier, Formula One is not just a driver's championship. It's an engineering championship. There's thousands of people working on development, the chassis, the power unit, everything in between. And to test if it's the best driver, you would need like a spec car series that everyone has the same car and they're really just testing who's the better driver, who's the faster driver, who can put the car on the limit more often. And even then you would have strategy discrepancies and tire stuff, and I'm sure you could limit and play with that, but it's not just about being the fastest driver. There's so much about timing and luck and partnerships. For example, these teams are also companies, right? They're not most of them are not just a Formula One team. There's something else behind them, and they're companies with their own interests, and their job is usually to deliver profit. If they're a public company, it's to, take care of their investors and all that. But if they're not vying for a championship, or even if they are, sometimes drivers with sponsorships or other connections are going to benefit them more than somebody who did better in F2. Or the thing is that when you're coming through the feeder series, you need to have an association to a young driver academy, or you just have to have really rich or wealthy parents. And there's also that lack of accessibility that causes a lot of people to drop out of feeder series. Again, that's not to say that winning Formula 3 or Formula 2 means that you're going to for sure do well in Formula 1, because the adjustment is a huge thing, and not everyone... There are drivers who do amazing in the feeder series that go on to perform very lackluster in Formula 1, but it's not just because of the adjustment. It's because, the team they go to, they might not be doing that well that year, or there's just so many factors in Formula 1. There's a lot about timing as well, because if it's what I'm seeing right now, there aren't a lot of people to retire. You've got Lewis and Fernando, who are the oldest drivers on the grid. You've got Hulk, who just came back. There aren't a lot of spots to be taken. I guess Checo's 34, 35, but he doesn't look like anywhere near to retire. And why should they? If Fernando's 42 and on the podium, what's the incentive to retire if some guy is 42 and doing the best in the last 10 years than he has? So I don't know. I guess there's a thing of the more backmarker teams will drop their drivers who aren't performing well, so there's room there, but it's hard to break into, and you have this golden generation of drivers which have proliferated the sport and have stuck around for quite a while, even though they haven't seen quote unquote success. You've got Esteban Ocon, you've got Pierre Gasly, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, all around the same 96 to 99 birth years. So it's, again, there's not a lot of room to proliferate, even though, like, yeah, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly are race winners, but just the teams that they've been with, they haven't been able to achieve that more success, which if they were at a front-running team, maybe they would be able to. So where is the room for the new F2 champion? Where is the room for the vice champion? Like, all of it has to come from either, like, your nationality, and that's why they want you, or you have corporate sponsors that they want, or like, everyone's a pay driver in some sense. So yeah, that's my little rant. Okay, the timer rang a long time ago, so last time I talked about which drivers I think I could take in a fight, and I think I said, like, almost everyone. I made, like, a tier chart for it, but this time I'm doing team principals, and a lot of them kind of scare me, and a lot of them are much taller than the drivers. That's also worrisome. Like, the ones I know freak me out are Toto Wolff, just, like, he's very large and broad, and I feel like he could punt me. Christian Horner, I weirdly think I could take. I feel like he's short. I don't actually know how tall any of these people are, but he feels short to me. And I think Otmar, I think I could take. Zach Brown, I could take. Who am I missing? Mike Crack, I think I could take, but he looks so, like, innocent and sweet. I wouldn't want to, you know? Fred Vasseur honestly seems like very chaotic evil vibes. Not chaotic evil, chaotic good vibes. So I honestly think that would be the most fair fight between me and Fred Vasseur. Because I feel like neither of us can really fight, and we both think we can, so it would actually be a really good matchup. I don't know anything about the guy who's the head of Alfa Romeo at the moment, so I won't say anything. Who am I missing? James Vowles. I don't know. He's a wild card. I think. I don't want to fight James Vowles, to be honest. Okay, and our last topic for today is the use of sports psychologists in Formula One. And this is because I found a paper, or an academic, whoa, Devyani, calm down. I found an academic paper about the mental side of Formula One, and it's really old. It's from the 1960s. It's by this lady named Bernice Kreikler, and it's called The Preliminary Psychological Assessment of Motor Racing Drivers. And she talks about how personality is really crucial to being a successful racing driver. And she talks about some of their common traits, like how they're prone to perfectionism, how they're highly competitive, etc. And it made me think about how this paper came out in, 1965, and it was only, like, very recently that sports psychologists and mental coaches started being okay in Formula One, which is crazy considering the, like, dangers of the sport, the history. Like, it's so much mental toughness because you're not always in control. Like, the amount of strength and confidence and just, like, mental security you need to do this when you are like, yes, lots of safety stuff has happened in the last 10 to 15 years. You've got the halo, like, so much stuff. But still, you're riding around really fast in this death trap. You're, like, bolted into it, basically. So the fact that it's only recently that sports psychologists have been accepted, and, like, for a while, teams wouldn't even hire them. And I don't know when it was. I think it was 2013 or 2014 where Lewis said that he never work with one. But that might have changed. I don't know. It was like 10 years ago, so who knows. But I think it's this younger drivers, like, of this generation. I guess they're Gen Z. I don't know. Like George Russell and Pierre Gasly and Lando Norris have all spoken publicly about using them. And I think Alex Albon's physio, Patrick, has taken courses and sought expertise as well on this matter. So, and wait. I think Lando Norris is with a mental coach. I don't really know the difference. I know that they are not the same thing. So somebody emailed me a question for the pod, which is so cool. That means someone listened. Amazing. But the question was, what are your favorite little things about Formula One? And that's such a good question. And I have a lot, but I'll start with okay, when the drivers get a podium and they get out of their car and they go to their teams and they like jump into the team's arms, like everybody at once. They're almost crowd surfing. I love when that happens. I also like when they like do the forehead touch between helmets, or like the helmet kisses. Cute, friendship, love, like not worrying about toxic masculinity. I love it. Speaking of helmets, I love specialty helmets, especially at drivers' home races. Speaking of which, it's not his home race, but kind of is. Valtteri's Australian GP helmet with the indigenous artwork. Beautiful. Also, Joe and Valtteri never miss with their specialty helmets. Or fucking cool. The cool celebrations on top of the car after they win. So Fernando's like bird thing, Lewis's Singapore, so fun celebrations. I love when teammates battle on track, and when the camera pans to the pit wall and everyone's just like, oh my god, don't crash. The Monza podium celebration when they have the humongous the Scuderia Ferrari flag with the Cavallino Rampante. Like I love when they drive old cars, like when Sebastian Vettel drove Nigel Mansell's old car, or when Mick drives his dad's old cars. Like, that's really cool because they're honoring their history. Sebastian Vettel's helmet messages are elite. That's all I gotta say. And I think we'll cap it there because this is like really long now. That's a problem. Oh, okay. So thanks everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episodes. Please feel free to reach out on TikTok or Twitter or Instagram, or at my email, f1deviani@gmail.com. If you have questions or things you think I should talk about, or you want to give me some constructive criticism, I welcome that. So thanks, and see you next week.